All righty. Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley. We are here with Rob Blackman. He is the voice of Purdue sports, and he is going to give us an update on what the Illini will be facing this Saturday. Rob, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, hi, Mike. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, it's been a challenging start to the season for Purdue. I know that Illini fans have a soft spot for Ryan Walters, former defensive coordinator who was excellent in his time with the Illini. Is there anything that you're seeing that is maybe causing some of the early season challenges for Purdue?
Well, boy, Mike, how much time do we have on the program? Uh, there are a lot of problems right now with Purdue football. I will start with this, Mike. Uh, Coach Walters, Ryan Walters, was very blunt in his post game assessment Saturday after the loss to Wisconsin in the press conference when he said, "Right now we are a bad football team," and that is a direct quote. There's a lot of things to like about Ryan Walters. One of the things I really appreciate is that he is very candid and very open with his thoughts. Because there are a lot of coaches who wouldn't just come right out and say that.
Right.
They might try to soften the blow, but I think he certainly understands. I know he understands that right now Purdue is a bad football team. If you had to pick one area of real concern, Mike, and again, there are a lot of areas, but third down efficiency for Purdue offensively has just been atrocious. And because of that, Purdue can't stay on the field. And because of that, the other team is running on the average 25 to 30 more plays a game. I'll harken back to Matt Painter, our basketball coach at Purdue. I've worked with him for now 20 years. The first thing he always looks at on the stat sheet when the game is over is rebounds and turnovers because he knows it's a possession game. And those two things determine who had more possessions. Typically, in a game where the talent is equal, if you have more cracks at the bucket than the other team, you're probably going to win. Well, football is very similar. When Purdue is, for instance, of the 4 games Purdue has played against FBS competition, and these aren't the exact numbers, Mike, but I know they're
Right.
close. Um, Outside of the Nebraska game, so the other 3, the other team is running roughly 73, 74 plays a game to Purdue's 45, 46. I mean, that's 30 more cracks at it offensively that the other team gets than you get, and that's because of Purdue's inefficiency on third down. In those 3 games I'm talking about, all 3 of them, uh, Notre Dame, Oregon State, and now Wisconsin, Purdue has converted either 2 or less third down conversions in all 3 of those games. Now that's hard to do. Only 2 third down conversions or less. If you do that in one game in a season, you know this, Mike, that can be an outlier. Strange
Yeah.
things happen in football. But if you're doing that 3 times in your first 4 games against FBS competition, yeah, that you just so now your defense is on the field too much. You can't. Imagine being an offensive player or staff member for Purdue, knowing that on the average in a game, you're only going to get about 45 snaps. That's a lot of
Yeah.
pressure to try to figure out
Yeah.
how to score points if you're only going to have the ball 45 times. So, in a nutshell, Mike, I would start there. The atrocious percentage for Purdue on third downs offensively, that has been probably the biggest bugaboo for this team early in the season here.
And this is shaping up to be a situation that Illini fans dread because in the history of the Illini program, and even under Brett Bielema for as well as he has done, Illinois has had some head scratching losses. In fact, you look at the year they went 8-4, the loss to Purdue, which was a good team, don't get me wrong, and
Yeah.
Michigan State leaves Illinois fans wondering, how did we lose that game? And I'm hoping the Illini have some motivation based on and I don't know how you call it anything other than a butt kicking that they took last year from Purdue. And at the same time, you're wondering if Purdue is struggling, will the guys come in with a sense of, oh, we're gonna roll Purdue, which seems to be very dangerous for a team when Ryan Walters has his back against the wall, and the Purdue team is probably pretty angry right now.
Yeah, and I would add this, Mike. The one game last year, and Purdue only won 4 games last year, but the one game you felt the most confident in going into was the Illinois game, simply because of Ryan Walters and other members of the staff their familiarity with Illinois football. I mean, you have a number of guys on that staff, Corey Patterson, Kevin Kane, who came over from Illinois
Yep.
with Ryan Walters. So as far as being familiar with the game plan and the personnel and that kind of, inside info that you don't always have, Ryan Walters and the staff, they had all they needed on Illinois. So that's why you felt so comfortable as a Purdue fan going into that game last year. And I hear what you're saying, Mike, I do. But I got to tell you, Purdue has so many problems right now that I don't know that even Coach Walters and his staff's inside intimate knowledge of Illinois football can be that big of a difference maker unless Purdue gets things figured out offensively. Illinois fans may know this, maybe not. Purdue did make a change at offensive coordinator. They fired
Yes.
Graham Harrell, who was the offensive coordinator to start the season. So last week against Wisconsin, Purdue was going with an interim offensive coordinator in Jason Simmons. There were some different wrinkles offensively, not necessarily more effective than weeks past, but at least it looked a little bit different on the field anyway, from a formation and strategy standpoint. So. Hey, I hear you. I was looking up the numbers earlier today, Mike. I was actually amazed that Purdue hasn't lost in Champaign since 2010. That to me is an amazing number, but it's true. I guess it is. It doesn't feel that way, but Purdue hadn't lost over there since 2010. So there are a lot of things traditionally, historically, that tells you Purdue is going to play well in this game. But man, the way Purdue labored early in the season, I don't know. It would take a real, maybe not a 180-degree turn for Purdue to really turn it around this Saturday, but damn near 180 degrees because it just hadn't looked good here in the first few weeks of the season.
Did you find it interesting that the two teams running the air raid, obviously Graham Harrell, it was terminated, and of course up in Wisconsin, Phil Longo is not necessarily having the degree of success that the game in and game out that they would like. Do you have any thoughts on whether that works in the Big Ten? Because as a longtime Illini fan, I remember when Illinois used to pass the ball all the time and be quite successful. And of course, Purdue has put guys in the NFL. I'm not saying an air raid philosophy, but certainly a willingness to trust the right arm or left arm of the quarterback and see what happens. Are things changing or what?
Well, I tell you, if you just want to look at the modern day history of Purdue football, Joe Tiller and Jeff Brom
Yes.
have had the most success, and they threw the football all over the yard. I mean, that's how they approached it offensively, and it worked. The great irony with Purdue, looking back to last year when Graham Harrell was the offensive coordinator and Purdue was running the air raid offense, is Purdue led the Big Ten in rushing last year. It was not Michigan. It was not Ohio State. It was Purdue that, if you just look at Big Ten games only, Purdue led the Big Ten in rushing, which in a lot of ways doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're the air raid offense, how in the world are you leading the league in rushing and only winning 4 games? But that's kind of how it worked out. I would say this, Mike. Last year, last 3 games really, and Hudson Card, Purdue's starting quarterback, did not play in one of those 3 games because of injury. But in the last 3 games of the year, Purdue really seemed to be putting it together offensively. Purdue really seemed to find a rhythm, especially in that final game of the year against Indiana. Hudson Card was playing well. Again, he missed one of those games, but he was playing well at the end of the season. He ended up being named honorable mention All Big Ten. Purdue seemed to really have figured it out at the end of the year offensively, which is why the start of this season is so mind-numbing and just doesn't make sense. You have the same quarterback coming back, same offensive coordinator, most of the same pieces, not all, but most of the same pieces coming back from a team that, again, really seemed to have found its footing in the air raid offense late in the year. But it just, for whatever reason, did not translate to the start of this season. Purdue's had some injuries at wide receiver. That's been a little bit of a concern, certainly. But, man, to be as optimistic as all of us were at the end of last year, you really felt like, hey, this thing is trending in the right direction. Yes, only went 4-8, but the offense is coming on. Defensively, it felt like, Ryan Walters' defense was finally starting to kind of find its footing as well. You couldn't wait for this season to start, and now this season has started, and it's been a dud. So I don't have the explanation for you, Mike. I wish I did, but it just everything you had last year leading into this year had you believing that things were on the up and up, and it just hasn't gone that way early in the year.
This is the Run My Own Business Dream. This is the college is paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
Yeah, it has been surprising. I know that Ryan was frustrated by being picked last in the Big Ten by some sources, and I certainly would understand that ire, especially finishing the way they finished. Offensively, coming in under a new offensive coordinator, it's probably hard to go totally away from the air raid in a week. But how do you expect them to try to attack this Illini defense that we still have concerns? Can they consistently stop the rush because they're thin at the defensive line? And it seems like the strength of this Illini defense is a group of defensive backs that have taken that step and elevated their play from what they were doing last year.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what the offense looks like in the second week under Jason Simmons. Look, that first week, which was last week, the announcement came down late Sunday night. I'm sure probably Jason Simmons knew about it, but he may have known about it maybe late Saturday night at best. And then, the players have the mandatory day off at Purdue. It's Monday. So quite frankly, it wasn't until Tuesday when everyone had a chance to reconvene and start putting in essentially a new offensive plan. And then you go on the road to play Wisconsin. Not real great timing there. But there you go. You have at least now you have 2 weeks to prepare for Illinois. The wrinkles we saw, Mike, last week, and again there were a few of them. Purdue played with with a fullback, which we have not seen this season. Normally line him up in more of an H-back position, but did use him as a true blocking fullback. Even I think attempted a pass, if I remember, to the fullback out of the flat. So we had not seen that this year under Graham Harrell. We also saw some different groupings of personnel running back wise. Purdue this year had only used 2 running backs, Devin Maccabee and Reggie Love, who's the Illinois transfer. But 2 other guys, young guys, freshmen, were worked into the rotation with the ones at running back. So Purdue tried 4 different running backs too. Purdue also went with a heavy jumbo package, 7 offensive linemen in a short yardage situation. Now, it wasn't successful, but again, it was a different wrinkle. We had not seen that this year with the 7 offensive linemen. So there were some things that were done differently. Again, look, when you only have a few days to prep, it's kind of hard to really put in a whole lot of new wrinkles. And as Ryan Walters said, you can't just completely blow it up halfway through the season because the players have learned certain terminology and certain formations and certainly certain audibles. You can't begin to relearn the system or start a brand new system. You're just going to have to modify the best you can with what you have. And then in the off season, then you can obviously look at and maybe doing some wholesale changes. So there were wrinkles. How Purdue is going to choose to attack that Illinois defense, that I do not know. Again, just because of the newness of all of this for all involved. The other thing Purdue did Saturday, again, without success, but it was a wrinkle, is Purdue played 2 quarterbacks at the same time, put Hudson Card out wide and brought in Ryan Brown, who's more of a running quarterback. I do think we'll see more of that, more of a wildcat package for him. So number of changes. Again, none of them really seem to work. I'm going to give everyone a free pass on that because it was week 1 and it was a really short work week. I think Purdue will be better this week offensively because now they've had 2 weeks to prep. And again, no one is going to understand Illinois' defense better than Ryan Walters. If anyone's going to know where the potential cracks are in that defense, he should know. So we'll see.
Now, quarterbacks always get probably too much credit and take too much blame. How's Hudson Card? Where's he at mentally? And what have you thought of his play this year?
Yeah, it's been, I haven't spoken to him since week 1. Just trying to read his body language, which is never certainly a good thing for anyone, but just seems to be a guy who doesn't have a lot of confidence right now. Again, he doesn't have a lot of weapons at the wideout position. Purdue is really looking forward to C.J. Smith joining him this year, transfer from Georgia, fastest guy on the team, hasn't played yet because of a hamstring injury. And from what I understand, may not play for even a couple more weeks. So there's your number 1 receiver down. Jamal Edgerrin, who missed all of last year because of injury. They were really excited about having him back in the lineup. He missed the game 2 weeks ago because of injury. So it's kind of been one of those stories where you're always trying to just patch it together at wide receiver. I do think if Purdue could get all of the guys at wide out healthy, the guys that should be running with the ones, that's going to help Hudson Card, obviously. The other thing that has really hindered Hudson is the pass protection has not been great. And I think part of that is the defensive coordinators understand that, look, your wide receivers aren't awesome. So we can bring some extra guys to blitz the passer, because the odds of your guys getting open in one-on-one coverage aren't very good. And so the coaches get paid a lot of money to know those things. And so they're coming after him, and it's been tough. Hudson he's thrown, and this is an incredible stat, he's thrown 3 pick sixes already this year, and we're not even halfway through the year. There are quarterbacks, as you know, Mike, in college football, they might go a whole career and not throw 3 pick sixes for a whole career. Yeah. He's done it 3 times, and we're not even halfway through the season. Now, a couple of those have just been a couple of bad bounces, but they still count as pick sixes. So, and that's not helping his confidence. Again, if Purdue could just convert a 3rd down or 2, like they did against Nebraska. The one game I haven't talked about, Purdue was like 8 of 15 against Nebraska. Because of that, Purdue runs, I think, 56 plays. Nebraska ran 58. Now you're pretty even in plays, and that game was a 7-3 game going into the 4th quarter. If Purdue can just convert a couple of 3rd downs, I do feel like this offense could show a little bit of life. But right now, it's not to date. That's not been the case.
Yeah, you go back to what Matt Painter said at the start of this. Your turnovers and your rebounds obviously lead to possessions, and just about every sport, if you possess the ball more, good things tend to happen to you and bad things tend to happen to the other team.
Outside of baseball, right? The only game where the defense has the ball. The rest of us in the other sports, we like the offense having the ball because then you can, do something with it. But I'm telling you, Mike, that's when and we talked about it earlier. If you're only getting 45 or so snaps a game offensively, it is really hard to score points unless you're a big time explosive team that can score on big plays, which Purdue is not offensively.
Let's turn the tables a little bit and talk about the defense. Illinois played against Penn State, had a lot of challenges protecting Luke Altmaier. Mm-hmm. And of course, that Penn State defense is truly scary because you have power guys on the line and they have speed at the rush positions. They were really tough on the Illini. Ryan Walters is famous for knowing how to blitz from all sorts of creative angles and places on the defense. Can the Illini expect a lot of people flying at Luke Altmaier this week?
Well, I think, and that's a pretty timely question, because where Purdue really got burned early in the game last week at Wisconsin is when it was 2nd and long or 3rd and long, and Purdue only chose to rush 3. And Wisconsin was converting. They were finding the big plays down the field in the zones on a 3rd and 22 or a 2nd and 20, whatever it might be. And asking Ryan Walters about that afterwards, he basically alluded to the fact that we're going to be done with a 3-man rush because it ain't working. So that's a pretty timely question. I would anticipate there are going to be a lot of different blitz packages that Illinois and Luke Altmaier will see this week. Again, simply because Purdue has found out that rushing 3 and trying to drop 8 in coverage has not been successful, even against a team like Wisconsin, who coming into the game had not been a really good passing team, but Purdue made them look like a good passing team. So yeah, I do think there's something to that. I think Purdue's done with a 3-man rush game. It's going to be blitz and pressure and see if they can dial it up on Luke Altmaier and see if maybe he can make a mistake or two.
How has Purdue done against the run? Illinois features a couple bruising big guys with some speed back there. The cliche is thunder and lightning, but when you have 2 guys who are 240 to 250 splitting time with a couple guys that are 190 to 200 and fast, are they fearful of that, or have they been good against the rush?
It's been a mixed bag. Wisconsin last week goes for, I think, 228, 229 rushing. And that was without their best running back. Ches Malusi announced midweek he wasn't even going to play. So you're going against their 2nd and 3rd string running backs, and you still gave up that amount of rushing. Purdue has, what we have seen for the most part, last week maybe not so much, Purdue has been pretty good against the rush for about 3/4 of the game. And then what inevitably has been happening, Purdue gets tired defensively because they're on the field so much.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're not as good tackling. They're not able to get their run fits properly because of fatigue. And those rushing numbers start to really balloon for the opposition. The one area that if you watch Purdue, you watch them on film, that Purdue in the run game has really labored against has been the running quarterback of all things. Running quarterbacks have really, even going back to the first game of the year against Indiana State, a game in which Purdue won. Purdue's only win of the season. Their quarterback had some real success running the football. So, running quarterbacks have been a problem for Purdue this year, and fourth quarter rushing actually has been a problem. Again, tough to fault the defense when they're on the field all the time for starting to wear down in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that they're almost running a 2-to-1 ratio, and that is a scary number for football coach, and really hard for the players to be productive. When you look at the special teams, punting, kicking, returns, how does Purdue stack up in that area?
Actually, Purdue's been really good in the special teams. The one exception, fumbled punt return last week led to Wisconsin's first touchdown. Outside of that, that's been about the only mistake Purdue has made in the kicking game. It has literally been the one bright spot for Purdue. Going with a new punter, Keelan Crimmins, this year, who has done a wonderful job punting the football. Now, he's had a lot of opportunities, but he has answered the bell pretty much every time, which has really been pleasant to see. Purdue's punt coverage has been good. Purdue has blocked 3, I think, field goals this year. I think it's 3. The kick return game, when that opportunity's presented itself, Mike, there aren't many returns available anymore. Most everyone kicks it into the end zone these days.
Right.
But when those opportunities have presented themselves, Purdue has been pretty good. So special teams across the board, and Ryan Walters has been quick to point this out, they've really been pleased with that. Chris Patelli is the special teams coordinator. They've really liked what they've seen from that unit. It's offense and defense where Purdue has labored.
How do you see this game flowing from what you've seen of the film of both teams? Is there any type of game you're expecting?
Well, I think emotionally, Purdue is awfully fragile right now. It is unfortunately become, what I can see, certainly from the broadcast booth, and that's a long way from the field, but from what I can see, it's become apparent that once something goes bad for Purdue, it's the snowball headed downhill, and Purdue just cannot find a way to stop it. A qualifier here: if Purdue has early game success against Illinois, I do firmly believe that Purdue, is talented enough and will certainly be motivated enough with Ryan Walters going back to Champaign that they can make this a ball game. Now, the flip side of that, there's an early interception or, a bad break, a bad bounce, whatever, bad call. Purdue is so fragile right now. It doesn't really matter what it is. If it goes against Purdue early and Illinois capitalizes and maybe scores a touchdown they shouldn't get, or Purdue gifts them a score that they shouldn't have had, then it could go downhill very quickly for Purdue. They just strike me as a team that emotionally right now is not in a state where they can afford to have bad things happen early. Again, hang in there early in the game, and maybe Purdue only has 2 takeaways all year, and they both happened last weekend. If Purdue could get a takeaway, heaven forbid a pick 6, something of that nature, scoop and score, just anything to maybe change that attitude of, oh no, here we go again, and change that attitude to, hey, okay, maybe we have a chance today. I do think Purdue's talented enough to hang in there. But again, Mike, if a couple bad things go against Purdue on Saturday early in the game, I think it's going to be really tough on my Boilermakers.
Illini fans have a lot of concerns that mirror what you have, because after last season's loss to Purdue, people are like, wow, how much could possibly go bad in one game? And then when you couple that with a couple of the head scratchers they had, starting 7-1 a couple years ago, ending up 8-4, which for Illinois is a fine record.
Yeah.
But you really saw an opportunity to maybe go 10-2 and have a double-digit win season, which doesn't happen all that often in Champaign. People will be looking very similar. Now, I'm not saying the team, but the fans will be looking very similar to what you're talking about, where it's like, oh my gosh, did we just walk into another one of these moments?
And I would add this, Mike, and this is not a disrespectful comment towards Illinois football at all, it's just the truth. when you look at Purdue's schedule the rest of the way, there are very few games on there that if you're being realistic, you say, oh, yeah, Purdue can get that one. And even though Illinois is top 25 in the country, maybe Illinois might be one of those. And I
Yeah.
say that because, if we just want to compare schedules here going down the stretch, or look at Purdue's schedule, I should say, Purdue still has three teams in the top 5 left on their schedule. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State are still on Purdue's schedule. 3 teams in the top 5. So now the pickings get kind of slim on where you're like, okay, who's a team we think we could possibly beat if we're being realistic about this, at least, in early October. Maybe my attitude on this changes in November. But for now, Illinois is one of those teams simply because they're not in the top 5 like the 3 others are. So I don't know. It'll be an interesting game again because of all the different dynamics that surround this, with Ryan Walters coming back to Champaign for the first time, and a number of members of his staff that were also at Illinois for an extended period of time and worked with Coach Bielema. So we shall see. But yeah, Purdue got off to a bad start, which is what Purdue certainly could not do this season, knowing that the back half of the schedule was a meat grinder. But that's where we are.
Red Grange wasn't just a football player, he was a legend. Discover the untold story of Illini great Red Grange in a new novel by Doug Vilhard called The Golden Age of Red. This captivating book takes you back to the 1920s, when a humble young Illinois player transformed into the galloping ghost and electrified the nation. Get your copy of The Golden Age of Red by Doug Vilhard today. Available on Amazon and wherever books are sold.
Yeah, maybe Ryan Walters and Brett Bielema can get together and ask the Big Ten, can we have Indiana's schedule? Because Kurt Cignetti's got a great team over there, and he's done good things with them. But you couldn't have asked for a better schedule. I really think Rutgers, Iowa, and Indiana got a Christmas gift way early when they got this Big Ten schedule delivered to them.
And this, Mike, and this is also, well, you could say it for basketball. You can say it for all the sports now. Our Big Ten champions from here on out are basically going to be decided by the schedule makers. All things being equal. All right. Yeah. I mean, I look at men's basketball. Typically, what has happened in men's basketball in the Big Ten is there have been 3, 4, 5 teams that are certainly legitimate contenders to win the regular season title. And normally the team that got the better schedule is the one of those 5 that wins it.
Right.
And now we're going to 18 teams. So it's really going to have a lot to do with scheduling and who's the better ball club of the 3, 4, or 5. Probably they're all about the same, but if you got the better schedule, you're probably going to be the team that comes out on top. Look at Oregon State, Ohio State, Oregon coming up this weekend. I mean, daggone, they're both more than worthy of being a national playoff team, and maybe they both will, but one of them's going to lose Saturday. So yeah, we will. You're right. Scheduling has a lot to do with it, but Purdue it's my understanding Purdue will always play Indiana and Illinois because that's the protected rivalries in football. So I guess we need to get used to seeing each other every year, no matter what.
I would like to see that rivalry protected in basketball. It's nice that we're at least having them play towards the end of the season because it seems like with Brad Underwood and, of course, for a longer period with Matt Painter, those 2 teams are going to be in the top of the Big Ten, and to have them meet and get prepared for the Big Ten tournament. And let's face it, with Zach Edey, Purdue has had Illinois' number for a while now. It will be very interesting to see this Purdue basketball team with a ton of talent, but they don't have what I thought was arguably the best center in college basketball since Shaq. And it'll be interesting to see what Coach Painter puts together, because Jacobson looks like he is going to be a really nice talent. At IlliniGuys, we were actually, I think, the first group to actually write an article about him. He is got great court sense.
Yes.
He has obviously physically, he can benefit from the weight room, but what high schooler can you not say that about?
Right.
And he understands the game of basketball. He's got a high basketball IQ, and he sees the court. But again, it will be interesting to see an Edey-less Purdue.
Yeah, it'll be a different looking team, certainly, when you have the National Player of the Year 2 straight years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to look a little different. But I agree with you on Daniel Jacobson. For your fans that don't know, the 7'4" kid who is now a freshman. I know Matt Painter, another 7-footer. Go figure.
Yeah.
As a Purdue fan, you do take great comfort in knowing that every 7-footer that's come to Purdue under Matt Painter has flourished. They've
Yes.
developed, and they've not one of those guys has ever gone backwards. They've gotten better. Zach Edey, the story on him was well documented, like the 450th best recruit in the country, and he ends up being National Player of the Year. So, good point though on Jacobson. I've been to a few practices. He's a little skinny. He's got those guys in the Big Ten are going to rough him up a little bit this year. That's for sure.
Better get their licks in early though.
Welcome to the Big Ten, freshman, because that's how it is in our league. When you're a skinny guy, they're going to beat up on you. That's what they do. That's what makes our league so great. So, yeah, be different. But I did see where Purdue was picked to win the Big Ten, which I don't know if that's good or not. That always makes me a little nervous. So we'll see.
To me, the biggest question that I want to find out, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but how effective will the guards be for Purdue without Zach Edey? And we will see. They may thrive and prove that the offense and the way coach spaces the floor with us is just fine, or we may find out that, boy, I missed that big guy in there attracting all the attention. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but I will say that as a guy who's very interested in college basketball, I can't wait to watch this season unveil itself, because the other thing is, can Indiana shoot? Woodson's put together teams, and he has a tendency to forget about the fact that you have to have good spacing and you have to be able to shoot from outside. And will they be able to do it this year? I'm not saying they won't, but you're going to have to prove it to me to say they do.
Yeah, and certainly I can only speak on Purdue, but I know this: the last 2 years, the basic rule of thumb with the guards was, if you get stuck, just throw it to Big Z. And that seemed to work okay. That's a heck of a safety net to have. If you get stuck, and that was Coach Matt Painter's words, you get stuck, just throw it into Big Z. Trey Kaufman-Renn will be very good in the low post. I think he had a good game against Illinois at Mackey Arena last year.
He did. Yes, he did.
But he is not Zach Edey, certainly. Right. I don't think Purdue's going to get away from throwing the ball inside, though. That's all we've ever done in the 20 years I've been around Purdue basketball. We always throw it inside, at least to start. So I don't think that will change. But, yeah, it'll be a different dynamic, especially those first couple games against high-level competition, when those guards get stuck and they look for Big Z and they figure out he's in Memphis, not in Mackey Arena. So that'll be different.
Yeah. As an Illini fan, that unfortunately, and I think Brett Bielema is starting to turn that around a little bit. But unfortunately, as soon as there's a hiccup in football, you just turn your attention to the basketball practices starting.
Sure. Well, we've had a few seasons like that at Purdue, for sure. Then, of course, you get your fans start arguing, well, are we a football school or a basketball school? Normally depends on which team's winning the most. Then that's the argument. Oh, well, we're a basketball school this year. Next, we're a football school this year. You know how that works.
I grew up in the 80s, so it was fantastic watching Illinois in the Mike White, John Makovic era. And then, of course, you had the 2001 and 2007 football teams that were exquisite years. And then Brett Bielema brought it back with the 2022 season. So we're hoping for more of those in the future.
You'll enjoy this. My first job out of college was in Mount Carmel, Illinois, downstate.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Mount Carmel. So I was there for 5 years before I moved on. And that was the Lou Tepper era when I was paying attention to Illinois football. So I remember those days quite well, 1993 to 98, roughly right in there.
Yeah, that was when Tepper had some unbelievable talent on defense.
Yes, he did. On defense, yes, especially.
Yes. Hey, Rob, I really appreciate you coming on. Now the Illini fans have an idea of what they're going to face. They have a little feeling of dread for the upset. This is going to be one that if something bad happens early, Illini fans are going to panic. I don't think the players will, but I think the Illini fans, they're going to have their heart in their throat really early if something bad happens at the start of the game. Because I will tell you, last year, watching the Purdue beatdown of the Illini, it was just like, what is happening? and again, Illinois fans, we are not arrogant like a lot of people, like where we think Illinois is going to win every week.
Sure.
But we were like, not this.
Right.
Because Brett Bielema's teams historically they don't get blown out very often.
Right.
So it was
Well,
kind of a nightmare scenario last year.
the beauty of college football, as you know, it is a week-to-week proposition. You just never know. People ask me, what do I expect from Purdue this weekend? I have no idea. We'll all find out together on Saturday.
Yeah, we all have a little Vanderbilt in us.
That's right. If Vanderbilt can do it, by God, any of us can.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you, Mike.
And if you enjoyed that, well, you can subscribe to Illini Guys at 27 cents a day. You'll get all of our podcasts. You'll get all of our news stories, but you get them usually ahead of time. You also get the opportunity to go back on our message boards, which is what the real benefit is, because there are rumors, innuendos, things that can't be published as a story because no one will go on the record. But many times you can get insight into what's going on behind the scenes, particularly in recruiting with basketball, football, and women's basketball. So there's a lot of neat things you get, only 27 cents a day. And it's a great community where it's Illini fans from all over the country, all over the world, go back and forth. You can argue the merits of, is the 2001 football team better than the 2007 football team? You can argue the Flying Illini versus Dee and Darren. It's a lot of fun. And you can also ask Ked, Brad, Matt, Larry, or myself, what did you mean when you said this? And you have that interplay back and forth. So it's a little different than just picking up a newsletter and reading it and putting it down. Of course, we have our YouTube page. When we have good videos, we will try to put them up. We will also try to do our best and get as many of the locker room interviews there for you as well. That's at YouTube. Just search on the IlliniGuys.com channel. And our podcasts are out there. You can listen to the Illini Guys Sports Spectacular. That's our weekly 2-hour Illini-centric talk show. It's on over 20 stations across the state of Illinois. You go to IlliniGuys.com, hit the radio button, and you can see a list of all the places that we have it. If you're not able to listen to one of those or you miss parts of the show, you can simply download the podcast at pretty much any podcast distributor. You can just search on Illini Guys Sports Spectacular. You can subscribe and get that to you. The three things we do on that show: one is we laugh a lot. Two, we don't waste a lot of time on the Yankees and the Red Sox or what LeBron thinks about everything that you find on many of the talk shows so often. And we don't yell and scream at athletes. We assume that if they knew they were going to airball the shot, they wouldn't have taken it. And finally, we don't talk politics. So if you want a break from the yelling back and forth about athletes or coaches who aren't that good and the yelling back and forth on politics, it's a great show to listen to. Obviously, we have Eye on the Illini as well. I have my own heat checks and Hail Marys. Any of these you can subscribe to, and you can enjoy a little bit of positivity in your day and talk sports. With that, we will be back later in the week. We've got some things planned. Until then, go Illini.